You ready to do this, Steve?
Let's do it, Spence. Punch it, Chewie.
Welcome to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I am Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot, as always, is Steve Madura.
What up, y'all?
We're two best friends. Despite being fathers and husbands, we just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 26. We release every Thursday morning on iTunes and Google Music, and you can find us there. Steve, 26 episodes in means we're officially 6 months old, my friend.
Wow, this is a big deal. Now, we've talked about it before where other podcasts of lesser numbers have been big deals, but this really is. I mean, all the other stuff, that was just kind of BS.
You know, Peter Christensen reminded me that we've now done a podcast for every single letter of the alphabet. So if you're counting along at home, this is number 26. I mean, I also just said that, but I mean, it's 26. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. 26.
In case they didn't know. You don't know
the alphabet?
Yeah, you should be doing should be doing some other things with your time if you don't know the alphabet. So
right.
Very cool. Very cool.
So anyway, we're glad to have everyone back here in the Fortress of Nerditude. We're going to kick back a little bit this episode. We're going to do something a little special, and hang with us. You'll find out, because this is kind of special to us. I mean, we've been doing this for 6 months. Steve, I was looking at this, and you jump in here and you fill in wherever you want to.
Yeah.
I found that we've known each other since, we were like 8 and 9 years old. We've been best friends ever since.
Right.
We've gone to college together and been roommates. We went on our missions at the same time, did everything together. I mean, just for years and years and years. Weddings, baptisms,
colonoscopies.
Everything. Hey, I asked you not to run the camera during that thing, and you did it anyway, against my wishes. I want those photos back.
The right price.
Anyway, but I found that over the last few years, since you started having kids, and then when I started having kids, like, making time to talk to one another wasn't a chore, but like, it just became harder because you were doing your things and I was doing my things. And so, like, I found that when we did talk on the phone, like, we would go on for like these marathon sessions where we talk for like 5 or 6 hours, and we'd just laugh and cry ourselves silly because we were laughing so hard. And that's something that we talked about, said that we wanted to change. Like, we wanted to talk on a more regular basis. And we've now talked every single week for the last 6 months. Now, granted, we were talking before that, prepping for the podcast and planning and working things out. But we've got a recorded 6 months straight of us talking once a week.
Well,
I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of talk that goes on before we start recording, and a lot of talk that goes on after, and then sometimes Spencer's still recording, and he uses words that I've used against me in the podcast. No, I'm kidding. But no, you think about life, and you think about how busy things get, because life happens, as John Lennon said, when you're making other plans, and so many times we carry around a lifetime worth of relationships and friendships and family in our little phones, but yet we don't make 2 clicks of our thumbs to talk to them, I mean, I have tons of people that I should be talking to, and I could be talking to and whatnot, but it's hard to do, right? And
sure.
The most important people in your life, your family and your closest friends, you want to hold them dear. And even still, as you said, Spence, it became hard to just make time, right? And so this has been an awesome opportunity. And we said from the beginning, no matter what happens, no matter if nobody listens or only our moms listen or whatever, it doesn't really matter, because this is an opportunity for us just to hang, just to get together and talk about our lives and about being fathers and husbands and some of the things that we love to do. And it has been a very rewarding 6 months. I honestly, I didn't think it'd last, 3 weeks, like my last relationship. I'm just kidding.
I think you've been married to Carrie a little longer than 3 weeks. I'm just saying.
Before that.
Unless you're talking about your side girlfriend that we're not supposed to talk about.
Ixnay.
Sorry. Just kidding. Just kidding.
That's right. But no, it has been an awesome experience. And so, and again, as Spencer always says, we thank you so much for joining us. It's always a fun time, and we appreciate you guys listening and having fun with us. So welcome home.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Steve, as we've gotten more friends, let's call them super friends, because I feel like Justice League, Fortress of Nerditude, Solitude, are super friends that are joining us. Yeah. I think I should make that the new thing. 6 months, it's time to step it up from friends to super friends.
We've gotten to the next level of friendship, yeah.
Yes. So the super friends that are joining us every week and listening and writing in, like, I really get excited when we put out like the question of the week and people respond, and I see, interaction, and like new super friends join us and they interact with us. And like, I've got friends from years ago that are like just direct texting me. They're saying, "Hey, did you see this trailer? Hey, have you seen this? Have you seen that?" And we talk every so often, but since the podcast, it's given places for friends of ours that maybe we haven't talked to in quite a while.
Yeah.
To like interact more with us. And it's been awesome.
And when you hear from the likes of like Bryce Jolly and Court Fruget and Jason Both and Peter Christensen and then the
Anna
new friends.
Anna Floyd.
Yeah.
It's just like people we haven't talked to in like a long time.
It really is an awesome thing. I mean, the tunnels and all the rest. I love it as well. And to hear, sometimes you get a comment just out of the blue, like Amanda Brocky. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like haven't talked to her in years, but love her to death. So it's right, really a cool thing that has happened, and we look forward to expanding the universe of our super friends.
Absolutely. By the way, talking about expanding universes, we had 2 people listen to last week's episode from Australia. And I promise I won't try the Australian accent again, because we know it doesn't go well.
I just hope our friend from Norway hasn't moved to Australia, Mr. Oslo Nodelpats.
I think Mr. Nodelpats will make an appearance every once in a while around these parts.
Well, let him know he's welcome.
It's been a great 6 months, and I'm looking forward to the next 6 months and beyond.
Well, let's get on with it. So I always start. So how was your week, my friend? Let's get into it. Give me a quick update.
Okay, so I had a really good week this week for the most part. There was something that did happen that wasn't good, and I'm going to wait until we get into Rebel Intelligence to talk about that. But talking about the good things in my week, do you remember the B movie, Jerry Seinfeld?
Yeah,
he did an animated
yep.
DreamWorks. Yeah,
so where he falls in love with a girl, right?
Yes. So for some reason, Charlie and Jackson decided they wanted to watch the B movie when they've never wanted to watch it before. So we turned it on. They have no joke watched that movie like 20 times in the last week. And just the other day I was coming down the stairs and I hear Charlie say, "We make the honey, we get the money." And I was like, what is he talking about? And I realized he's quoting that movie. And I was like, okay. So the boys are involved in that movie. They love it. I mean, they want to watch it morning and night. And anyway, so a lot of fun there. We finished season 2 of The Flash on Netflix, and I was a little depressed because season 3 is just finishing on TV right now. But then I read an article that said the CW has signed a deal with Netflix like a year ago so that a week or 8 days after the finale ends, it automatically goes on a Netflix. So when this episode releases, I'll only have to wait like about another week, 8-9 days, and then we'll have the third current season of The Flash to watch. So we'll probably power through that on Netflix. And since we need something to watch, Steve, on your recommendation, we now started Arrow.
Ooh, so we're nice.
We're watching Arrow, and I think we're like 3 episodes into that already.
And do you like it?
I'm liking it. I mean, it's darker than Flash. It's definitely darker.
Yeah.
But I'm liking it so far, and I'm curious to kind of know, like, some of the things that are going on, because I've seen the character of the Arrow and kind of his team on the Flash when there's kind of some of those crossover episodes. So I know there's some characters that still need to be introduced, and more of the backstory to kind of get to where he's at. So now I'm liking it so far.
He was brought in though in different episodes. On the Flash, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very
so
cool.
so I have seen him a little bit.
Okay.
So yeah, gosh, what else? Jackson, my youngest, who's a total mommy's boy most of the time, has learned that if he wants something and mommy won't give it to him, he comes to me and asks me. And of course, I usually say no. Well, now he's learned because I so want this boy to just, have that interaction like I do with Charlie, where he's just a daddy's boy and he wants to play with me. So Jackson will come over and he'll ask for something. I'll say no, and then he'll give me a hug and he'll give me a kiss because he knows that I'll crumble and then give in and give it to him. And he's right. I mean, he's 3 and he knows me. I'm like, oh, buddy, that was great. Sure, you can have another fruit snack.
Oh, you will rue the day, my friend. Wait till he's 13.
I know. Over the weekend, I spent some time. I sat down in front of the computer. I was intending to go upstairs and play. I'm playing Ocarina of Time, Zelda on my GameCube. I'm kind of going back and playing an older game. And so I intended to sit down. However, I started looking at like WordPress stuff to create our upcoming webpage for the podcast. And like next thing I know, like 3 hours has gone by and I'm gotten like all these kind of ideas and I'm looking at themes on WordPress and trying to figure out plugins. And so I just kind of got lost in a hole on the internet looking up website creation, and it's a whole new game to me. I've never done that. So it's totally out of my element, which means I'm going to learn and it's going to look horrible at first, I'm sure, but then we'll improve because I'll, figure some stuff out. But that was kind of fun. It was kind of interesting looking at something new and trying to learn something.
Absolutely. Making and creating. That's so. Do we have any kind of ETA as you're kind of getting into it? I know it takes time.
So, no.
Okay. Hey, that's all right.
In all honesty, I think I've kind of got the idea of which WordPress theme I want to use, but now I just need to make sure I can find the right plugin that'll work so we can have a player for the podcast on the website itself. So if a listener, one of our super friends or a soon-to-be super friend wants to sit down but like really can't listen to it on their phone or in their car and they want to listen to it like at work, maybe they work a job where they can sit and listen to something while they punch in numbers at a computer screen or whatever, I want to make it so they can listen to the podcast right directly from the website. And so I just need to find that plugin. And so I'm kind of looking at stuff. So if any of our super friends out there have any experience with WordPress and creating websites and making it so you can connect to podcast players, devices, and you are interested in giving me some free advice, because I'll take it, you know how to get a hold of us. Fort of Nerd, right. At Fort of Nerd on Twitter, fortofnerd@gmail.com. Probably the email is the better thing because 140 characters would be a little short, a lot of little tiny tweets. So then you press this, next tweet. Then you do this, next tweet. You know what I'm saying? Just
right.
Anyway. So Steve, one last thing I want to talk about. Last week, and I've got to get this in now. Last week we talked about some of the things we did real quickly for Mother's Day, right? The dinners we made and the lasagna.
Yes. Chocolate covered strawberries. Yep.
So our good friend Bobby Pauls on Twitter at Nintendo Gurus, who's on, If We Ran Nintendo and the Geekcast, he was giving me a lot of crap because he was saying, "Oh, Martha Stewart, look at you." And I thought he was talking about the whole like knitting hats and then riding bikes thing. He's like, no, I'm talking about the food. So over the weekend, I made a dessert calzone for my wife and I. And I'm going to take just 2 quick minutes and I'm going to go Martha Stewart on you.
Ooh,
so for those listening at home, here's the recipe. So, and by the way, Bobby, this is for you, my friend. You're going to heat your oven to 450 degrees. You're going to get some pizza dough. You can either hand make your own pizza dough, which I highly prefer if you have the time, or you can actually go get the pre-made like Pilsner, you little crack it open and it, flops out. Get the pizza dough stuff, and you basically want to kind of spread it out. And then on half of that, so like if it's one sheet, you're going to put on half, but you're going to put a layer of peanut butter, then a layer of Nutella.
I like it already.
Then you're going to slice up bananas and put a bed of banana slices. And then you're going to put some mascarpone cheese down on top of that, which is kind of like a sweet cheese. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take an egg and you're going to whip up just one egg so you get what's called an egg wash. And then you are going to put egg wash along the three sides where you put your peanut butter, Nutella, banana, and the mascarpone. You're going to fold the other half over it because we're making a calzone here. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to pinch those edges down, right? Because you want to seal that in because when you cook it, you do not want that stuff to spill out. You're going to pinch it real tight. Yeah, get it in there, man. Then you're going to kind of fold over that pinched edge and pinch it down on top of itself again. I mean, I'm thinking you want to make sure that thing is tight. Then you take the egg wash and you just kind of lightly brush the egg wash over the top. You take your now ready to bake dessert calzone. You slide it into the oven on whatever device, cookie sheet or pizza stone, whatever, for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you pull it out. The thing the dough should have puffed up and it'll kind of look like a calzone, like it's all puffy. You pull it out, you let it cool for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. You sprinkle it with some powdered sugar, and then you cut it up and serve. And let me tell you, it is delicious. It is better than average. I'll put it that way. I don't want to build it up too much.
Ooh.
It's better than average. But it is meant to be deserved and delicious and in your tummy. And I'm just telling you, it's amazing.
Don't raise that bar too high.
I know. I started to get up there. I'm like, this thing is the greatest. I'm like, no. It's let's be generous. Yeah, it's better than average.
We don't want a Mortal Kombat on our hands again. So yeah,
that's what I'm saying. You'll enjoy it. Yeah. So Bobby Pauls, my friend, this has been your Martha Stewart moment. Now back to you, Steve.
Nice. Very nice. I actually saw that in the show notes earlier, probably earlier this week, and I saw that. I'm like, what is this? Maybe this is like a typo? How did this get in here? And then I started reading. I'm like, this sounds delicious. So,
man, it's so good. I actually put a picture on Twitter. So yeah, just Twitter.
Yeah.
Man.
I don't know what mascarpone cheese is. Is that something that you see often? What do you see that in mascarpone cheese?
I don't really know. It's the first time I've actually ever bought that ingredient and used it.
Okay.
Is
it in the freezer section, or where's it at?
It's kind of over by the cream cheese.
Okay.
You find it over there, but it is kind of it's got a consistency of kind of cream cheese, a little bit lighter, like whipped cream cheese, but it's kind of a sweet flavor. And so it kind of just goes with this. And I looked up a couple recipes because a local restaurant around here makes that dish. So I really loved it, and I wanted my wife to try it, but we don't have the option to get up into that area a lot. So I was like, I'll bring it home to her.
Good man. Look at you. Well, now Bobby Pauls has all the more reason to tease you. There you go.
Absolutely.
My week is good. Actually, tonight, my wife and I are kind of scrambling and working like little Keebler elves because my daughter, Lila, who we don't talk about too much, but Lila is turning 4 tomorrow.
That's so awesome.
So, yeah, it's such a fun age. She loves her dad so much, which why wouldn't she? But no, she's just sweet and easy to please and just lots of love and all smiles all the time. And she's got little bobs on her little hair because she doesn't grow hair very much, just like all Maduras. We don't have lots of hair.
Or you lose it later on in life as well.
Very quickly, that's right. And so anyway, so we're decorating right now, and I think we're going to do like a Moana theme, but my wife bought a bunch of like Care Bears to put on the cake because like Care Bears are making a comeback apparently, and so
really?
I don't know. Yeah, I know.
Care Bear stare.
That's right. And so anyway, so she's upstairs doing that right now. So if you hear any background noise, that is her. This weekend was kind of funny. So we had a big storm last week, and it like Thursday, Friday last week. A lot of wind, a lot of rain. And my wife wakes me up the next morning. She's like, "Oh, look out our bathroom window." And we were on the second floor, looking down in our yard. There's a huge tree branch that fell over our neighbor's lawn or our neighbor's fence. And I'm like, "Whose responsibility is that?" She's like, "That's ours." I was like, dang it.
Yep.
And I'm not the guy that has like lots of tools per se. I'm not really what we call like handy, if it was to be called such. And so I have like a saw, like probably a 3-foot saw or 2.5-foot saw, whatever, a handsaw. That's all I got. So I make my kids get out on Saturday morning in the rain, and we're like, "Come on, kids, we got to go cut that thing down." So I have them out there. My little daughter Alana, who's who's 7, going to be 8 soon, is like, can I saw? I'm like, sure. Because I just read this article online about like giving your children like independence, letting them use real knives and all this stuff, teaching them independence. So she's out there like sawing away. I got my other son with like the wire, the chain cutters cutting up the little branches and stuff, had them busting their hump, earning their keep. And I'm like, this is a good teaching moment. I'm like, you know, kids, back in the day, people had to do this not because of a storm. They had to do this for warmth. And if they didn't do it in the winter, they would freeze to death. I'm like, that taught them good. So anyway,
so let me ask you this. Were you sitting in the lawn chair watching them? Because I have this image of like them working
in the
and you sitting back there going, yeah, kids. No, little to the left. Cut that branch first.
You can imagine that. But yes, no, I was in the thick of it with them. But it was a really cool thing to like, they by the end of it, they had this little stack of wood, and we often have fires in our fire pit in the backyard and roast marshmallows and tell ghost stories and whatever. And so I'm like, think of how good you'll feel when we start the next fire and you have cut all this wood. They're like, yeah, probably not any better than the other wood we use.
So, Steve, I would recommend you go get a chainsaw. You can get a chainsaw for like $200 maybe at Home Depot or Lowe's.
Oh, yeah.
And here's why. I've been in your neighborhood. You guys have a lot of trees.
We do.
A lot.
We do.
And you do have quite a few like directly around your property.
We do.
And with storms and whatnot, it's a good idea, because we had this happen to us this last spring and fall. We had a lot of trees in our neighborhood go down to a really big windstorm. And I found that like me and like 3 other guys kind of like in our block, or like 2 blocks, were like the go-to guys, because we had the tools. And so like when we were going out there, and like everyone from the neighborhood's like chipping in and like helping, like these mass groups of people just like going down a street and chainsawing up, you know, down trees and whatnot. And then everyone like scurries and like moves them off and whatnot.
Right.
Like, it's awesome to be that guy that are like, Madura has a chainsaw. We need him. He's on our team. Versus like, oh, Madura's got a little handsaw. Yeah, they can take him. He's on their team.
I kind of want to be the guy that they just kind of pass by. Like, he doesn't have anything. Just keep on going. I can stay in my hammock. So that was cool. But the last thing that I want to talk about, and you'll have to indulge me, but I'm trying to, you know, in the spirit of self-betterment, I've been reading this book, and I'm going to put it up to the camera. It's called Stepping Up.
Where's Waldo?
Exactly. And it's called A Call to Courageous Manhood. And basically it's all about like stepping up as fathers, stepping up as husbands, stepping up as men. And it starts out by asking, what's the most courageous thing you've ever done? And this is a you know, rhetorical question, but just to think about as men, like for those men listening and women as well, I guess. But what's the most courageous thing you've ever done? And it starts out with a story about this guy named Gene, but everybody calls him Red. And this is back in World War II. And I'm just going to read a quick excerpt from this. And it says, on April 12th, 1945, their plane was part of a bombing raid of a Japanese chemical plant in somewhere in Japan. And so he said this was Red's 18th mission, so he knew the drill. Open the chute, pull the pin, release the canister. 8 seconds later, the bomb would ignite and would when it was well clear of the aircraft. So his job was basically to release these canisters. It would let the other planes behind them know where to bomb. And said, but not this time. For some unknown reason, the smoke bomb exploded before the drop chute, coming back in the hull and back in Red's face. White-hot phosphorus burning at 1,300 degrees blasted smoke into the cabin and raised torturous havoc on Red's skin and eyes. Red was literally on fire. The entire crew was in danger. The smoke bomb itself was eating through the metal of the bulkhead, where the rest of the real bombs were stored. There were 2 options. Watch the fire spread to the other munitions and the bomb bay explode and crash into the ocean before everything totally blew up. Or maybe there was another alternative, if a man had true courage. Grabbing the white-hot canister in his right hand, Red stumbled towards the front of the aircraft, weaving blindly by instinctively towards the cockpit window. Suddenly he collided with the navigator's table that blocked his path to the cockpit. Still afire, he wedged the bomb between his forearm and his rib cage, grappling with the spring latch of the table that required both hands to lift it. With a last surge of energy, Red scrambled into the cockpit, flung the glowing fireball through the open portal and out into the waiting waters of the Pacific below, and then collapsed in a sizzling heap. Basically, he saved the entire cockpit. Every man on board was saved, and Red Irving's life hung in the balance. A month after the accident, his body was still smoldering, the phosphorus reigniting with every exposure to oxygen as the doctors scraped another layer of flesh from his body. He spent the next solid year with his eyes sewn shut and endured more than 40 surgeries. Even with the Congressional Medal of Honor hanging around his neck, he would always bear the limitations of his body seared by an unimaginable heat. Yet Red Irving lived to father 4 children and hold 7 grandchildren in his lap. He also lived to coach Little League teams and follow the Alabama Crimson Tide football, to go to church on Sundays and to retire from a long career with the Veterans Administration. And that's how this book starts. And I've read more of it, but it's just it just talks about what true manhood is, what true courage is, and not to get deep and heavy in this podcast, but it's more than just about video games and our love for pop culture. It's also about our roles as husbands and fathers and how that all weaves into our lives. And I just think there's like this clarion call to now, right now in our time, in our history of our life and our world and whatnot, that there's just a need for men to be men. And I know, Spencer, speaking specifically to you, like, your father was one of those men that I definitely respect as a man that did what not always he wanted to do, but what he needed to do, because that's what a man does. And so,
right.
A shout out to Gary Stapleton and Tim Madura and Joe Hicken and and Mike Mosley and all the men out there that stand up and do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. So
I also want to add Chip Gifford to that list, my father-in-law.
There you go.
You're talking about that. I mean, obviously, my dad's no longer with us, but I've got a great father-in-law. Like, I can't say enough. I can't say enough good about him, because he's always one to like chip in and help and work and just get things done. And he really tries to lead his family by his example. Like, he just tries to be a very Christ-like servant who just gives of himself and does that. And like, I'm blessed to have him in my life. He's a wonderful man. And, like I said, I don't get to be around my father anymore. My father's been gone for many years now. But you're right. I mean, being around men who you can look up to, fathers you can look up to, or father figures you can look up to in your life is a great thing to have. And I feel like you and I have been very, very, very well blessed in that department.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, so just a shout out to that. I'm reading that book. I'll give you the full review, but anybody who wants to pick it up, again, it's called Stepping Up, and it's by Dennis Rainey. It's a fantastic book. So
is this was this a recommendation from your little marriage retreat thing?
It was. He's actually the president and CEO of Family Life. So I didn't want to make the connections. I'm not like pushing his products or anything, but it's a fantastic book, and there's a program that comes with it that people can do if they want to get a bunch of men together, and there's actually like a workbook, and you go through these different kind of lessons. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Cool.
So
cool.
So anyway, so that's my week, and life is good. So,
well, let's move on then.
Let's do it.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
Okay, Steve, Rebel Intelligence, my favorite part of the program.
Absolutely.
However, last week you said, hey, we haven't talked about anyone passing away. And unfortunately,
I jinxed it.
Yeah, that's how we're going to start this Rebel Intelligence. So I've had a real hard time trying to find a way to kind of put words to this, because for some people, you hear of celebrities or people, musicians or actors or artists, comic book designers, video game people passing and you're sad for their loss. But some people touch you personally more. Chris Cornell died this last week of an apparent suicide. He was 52 years old. Chris Cornell was the lead vocalist for Soundgarden, for Audioslave, Temple of the Dog, which was kind of like a one-off thing because a friend, the band was called Mother Love Bone at the time, which that band turned into Pearl Jam. But one of their founders of Mother Love Bone died. And so Chris Cornell joined pretty much the remaining people that would form Pearl Jam for Temple of the Dog, and they did an album together. He did 4 solo albums. Chris Cornell was a musician. He was a singer. He was a songwriter. He co-wrote and performed songs for Casino Royale, You Know My Name, which is, in my book, one of the best James Bond themes. Soundgarden also recorded the Live to Rise for the Avengers. Cornell had previously recorded a song called Seasons, but they asked him to re-record it for the Man of Steel movie. Cornell's considered by many, and I mean many, many within the industry, to be one of rock's greatest singers of all time. Just has this amazing voice for rock and roll. But that's not all he was. Like, he focused on charity work, and he raised money, and he like helped the homeless and took care of people. He was this. He was a man. He was a human being. He had some personal demons. He kicked his addiction problem like back in like 2002, but he still struggled with depression and some mental health issues, and we've lost him. And that's really sad to me, because he was one of those people that his music touched me. I mean, I love his music, but he was one of those voices that came out of the Seattle grunge scene in the late 80s, early 90s that really helped like revive and change the music scene and lead and usher in this whole new kind of genre of music. But he was this very like smart and funny intellectual person who, when he would be asked questions and would be in front of the media, like he just would light up. He didn't like try to pretend like he didn't care or like it was too cool for school. Like, he was engaged with people, and he's no longer with us. And for someone who's around my age, you know, that music scene was big, and it feels like kind of that scene, you know, spoke for, you know, those musicians kind of spoke for our generation in a lot of respects. And that was the music of our generation. And he's gone now. And I was looking at it. Kurt Cobain, lead singer for Nirvana, gone, died in 94. Lane Staley, the original singer for Alice in Chains, is gone, 2002. Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots, you know, gone, you know, like 2 years back from a drug overdose. And then this year, and just, you know, this last week, Chris Cornell, due to suicide. And apparently he'd taken some medication for antidepressant, and it interacted. It went bad. Something happened, and, you know, it didn't go well. So really, like right now, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam is pretty much the only kind of remaining vocalist from that era and that movement of grunge. And, you know, I hope that Eddie's okay. I mean, I know that all of the bandmates of Chris Cornell's and his friends and people and his family, like, our thoughts and our prayers got to all those people, but I don't know. It's just sad. Like, it was, for me, this is just like, it's a really emotional thing, because it just feels like there's a little part of me that represents kind of like my childhood and my, you know, coming of age that just was kind of died this week along with it. It's taken from me. And anyway, I don't want to get too heavy on this, but I do want to close out kind of this thought on, you know, the fact that Chris Cornell is no longer with us, with a line from one of his songs. And it says, "In my shoes a walking sleep, and my youth I pray to keep. Heaven send hell away, no one sings like you anymore." And I feel that way.
Yeah.
Heaven send hell away, no one sings like you anymore.
All our thoughts and prayers and condolences go out to the Cornell family, and it's a sad thing when, and you know, obviously there are a lot of people that, as we kind of, not humorously, but as we talked about last week, people, you know, pass away every day, and you know, it's more spotlighted obviously because the media and a public presence and a public persona, but it's unfortunate that so many seemingly, I guess, so many celebrities and musicians and whatnot kind of fall prey to this, this end, this tragic end of whether it's overdosing or suicide or whatever else. And it's just, I think it goes to show as well that you can never think that somebody has enough money to make them happy or enough fame to make them happy or enough friends or enough whatever. People are still hurting. So never too much to call somebody you're thinking about or give a smile or a handshake or a hug or whatever else. So anyway, one of the things that I had on Rebel Intelligence was that Arnold Schwarzenegger is set to re-team with James Cameron for the next Terminator movie, which in and of itself I think is a big deal. Not so much, I guess, that Arnie is coming back, but really that James Cameron, because I think he's really been the missing link, right? I mean,
absolutely.
There has not been a good Terminator movie, or at least one that makes sense, since Terminator 2. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of the Salvation or Genesis or whatever the most recent one was, which it was even misspelled. I don't even know.
Yeah, I did see Genesis. It actually was kind of just okay, but it was kind of like telling the first movie from like a different point of view, like if things had gone back in time and slightly altered the timeline. And so it was kind of cool, but at the same time, I mean,
now I haven't seen that, but I've read the kind of the reviews of that, and they just say it's so convoluted because there's like, if I go back in time, but before that, and if he knows about that, then John Connor, and then John Connor's some cyborg. I'm just like, what the? Like, and it kind of goes back to the sequel comments that we had last week about undoing everything that was done in the first film. That just doesn't start well.
Or undoing everything that's been done in like the 5 films previous to your film.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, so hopefully this next installment, bringing Arnold back together with Cameron is going to make for something good, something that we can hang our hat on.
I'm on board. I mean, James Cameron having the rights back just makes me happy. Like, I feel like that's where they should be anyway.
Right.
So
when you
I'm more than cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, when you consider what he did for Terminator 2 25 years ago, which I want to add an exclamation point on that. Amazing, right? So let's see what he can do this time.
Right.
So,
yep, I agree.
What do you got?
Coming up, Steve, we've talked that there's, the Spider-Man movie that's coming up.
Right.
Well, in the Sony world, because you got to remember that Sony owns the distribution rights to Spider-Man, but Marvel's kind of getting involved. Well, apparently they're going to make a Venom movie, Sony is, that's going to be kind of separate from the MCU. And Tom Hardy, who last we saw, who played Bane, Mr. I have a horrible voice in this movie. He's going to play Venom in the new, and play Eddie Brock, the character that Venom, the symbiote, takes hold of. He's going to be playing Venom. And so I know Venom is a popular character. I mean, it really got really popular in the 90s. Like, everyone wants to see Venom stuff. I mean, that's why we kind of saw him in Spider-Man 3, because he was shoehorned in there with 18 other villains.
Yes.
But I just a standalone Venom movie. I mean, how does that sound to you on its own merits?
I guess, it could go one of two ways. It could go into some kind of origin story where they kind of retell how it became to be and whatnot, and bring, Spider-Man into it, but just not obviously starring Spider-Man, or having just kind of alluding to it. Or, they could start with the assumption that we know this character and kind of just start off with a story and just get right into it. I think if they take the second tact, it's going to be a better story and a better movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's kind of how I see it.
Well, I guess we'll have to see what Sony does with it.
I would say, though, like, Tom Hardy is pretty solid in everything he's in. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. There's one movie that I saw him in. It's he plays a boxer, and his dad is Nick Nolte, I believe, who's a drunk. I don't know if you know the name.
This sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, somebody who's listening could probably tell me, or IMDb the crud out of it. But a great movie, and it's one where
is this where like he's got a brother that's a boxer
exactly
also?
Yep.
And they have to like end up boxing one another and like
yep.
Yeah, what is that movie?
It's a good movie.
I've seen it.
It's a solid movie. Anyway, but that just like goes to show that any movie he's in, he is like so intense, like so much so that I would not want to like see him in a dark alley. Like he seems pretty intense guy. So anyway, so I'm looking forward to it. I go to see that movie, a little Venom action. So
okay, yeah.
So long as it's nothing like Spider-Man 3 was. So Wonder Woman.
You mean you don't want the finger snapping and the jazz dancing right before Venom's gonna pop out?
Ooh, bad guy, bad boy. Yeah, that was just weird. So Wonder Woman, the reviews are pouring in, and they are all extremely positive. So
it's about time.
Yeah. Everybody is just praising DC for finally making a palatable movie. I mean, a lot of people are calling it inspiring, getting chills as watching Wonder Woman, like, forge into battle, and saying that the chemistry between the leads is just awesome. Chris Pine is great as a complimentary. And anyway, so I'm totally stoked to see it. They're saying it's the best thing since Batman. So,
wow. So Rita and I think, are going to go with Josh, my brother, and his wife, Steph, on a double date to go see it opening weekend here, which is in about a week,
it's
little
June,
over a week and a
June
half
2nd,
from,
I think, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks from now, but it'll be like a week and a half or so from when the podcast drops.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to going and see that. Here's the other thing, Steve. Like, DC needs a win. Like, when it comes to their movies, they need a win badly. I personally feel like I like a lot of the DC characters. I like some of the, the DC comics. I'm really starting to get into some of these DC TV shows now, Flash and Arrow, but the movies are just struggling. So I think coming up, Steve, we need to do kind of a conversation at some point, maybe a round table, and talk about some of these DC movies and some of the stuff going on in the DC universe. And we should bring in an expert, maybe two, but definitely bring in someone who's a big DC guy. And I got someone in mind.
Yeah, that's a great idea. No, let's give DC some love. They're trying. That's for effort. So anyway, the one thing though is I actually watched a movie this past 2 weeks ago. I think I talked about it, but I didn't realize that Gal Gadot was in it as well, and she plays kind of an undercover spy neighbor in the suburbs, and Zach Galifianakis plays kind of the nerdy neighbor that kind of figures it out. Anyway, didn't realize that she was in it until I watched it. And she's phenomenal. Like, she's a very commanding presence on screen. So I can only imagine that as Wonder Woman, I mean, people even said she reminds them of Christopher Reeves' Superman, a true North superhero with no angst, no cynicism, which is what we need right now. Yeah. So, quite the compliment.
I'm all about that, man. I'm excited. Like, hearing you talk this up has me even more excited.
It's going to be better than average, I think.
Better than average. Yes. Okay, Steve. This last week, there was in the gaming world, there was kind of a big reveal from the Bungie studio. Destiny 2 has had some gameplay shown off and some information about when the release is going to be for the upcoming Destiny 2 video game. Now, I played the original Destiny a lot. Even though, like, it had its flaws, like the story wasn't great, and there was, a lack of story and some of this other stuff that just kind of seemed a little hokey and weird. But they've been working on it, and they've been kind of improving. They put out patches and extra DLC. But the second game is coming out September 8th for PC, Xbox One, and PC. And the director says it's going to be kind of like a new beginning. I get the impression that they're basically going to say, like, hey, here's the world you've been playing in, and something catastrophic is going to happen, and basically kind of wipe all that out, so you're going to have to, like, kind of start over again, and there's going to be some changes made. Okay. I know that they're going to change the way they did kind of the PvP from a 3-on-3 to, like, a 4-on-4. I know they're going to make some of there's some game modes, like, there was a big raid that you could go on. You had to get a group of players to go and do this, like, objective-based, kind of storyline together. And there's something called a Nightfall, which are kind of like harder versions of, some of these dungeons that are kind of a little easier. But they're going to make some of that available. They're going to make it available to, like, find other people. like if you only have 2 people in your group and you need 4 people, they're going to have like an in-game way to find other people that are looking for a group to play together, which has kind of been something in the past that it didn't have right off the bat, that they kind of had to kind of shoehorn in. Yeah, kind of like an AOL chat room back in the day.
Nice.
But anyway, it looks really, really good. I mean, I played Destiny a ton when it first came out. I mean, I probably played it for a good 6 months straight. That was like the only game I played. And then I just kind of put it down and I walked away, and I had friends that stayed and played longer, but I just kind of moved on. And I had really no desire to go back to the game when new expansions came out. But I'm kind of excited about this second one. It's looking pretty darn cool, I gotta say.
That is awesome.
September 8th, I may be playing Destiny 2.
Very nice.
So Steve, talking about Destiny 2, kind of another game-related news. The Witcher game series, which has been really big and really popular, but kind of more on the graphic, more intense side. Think kind of like a Game of Thrones, but a video game. Well, it's actually going to be getting its own series on Netflix that's going to be coming out later. And I know a lot of people are really excited because this game is really heavy on storytelling and, kind of plot-driven, action. And so that's going to be coming to Netflix. So that's really exciting for a lot of people. I don't know where I kind of feel where I stand on this just yet because I haven't played those games.
Right.
I just haven't had time, and so I kind of don't know if this is going to be something I'm really going to be in, but I'll be willing to give it a try and see what happens.
Is there any kind of hesitation or concern, kind of the history or the track record of video games to movies, video games to TV shows?
Sure, that's always going to be a concern. I mean, there hasn't been a lot of movies based on video games that have done well. But, I mean, Netflix, really all their original series stuff has been pretty good so far.
True.
I mean, they got a pretty good track record. So, I mean, I think that if anyone's going to do it, HBO or Netflix right now, I feel like are kind of the two that would have the best shot at making something like this happen.
What about Cinemax?
So, I don't watch anything on Cinemax, so I couldn't tell you.
Sure you don't. So, well, that's cool. Well, I think that's about all I've got for Rebel Intelligence this week. Why don't we get to a little Q&A, shall we?
Let's do it. So, Steve, last week we talked about kind of the upcoming fall preview for the TV shows. And we asked what are some of the TV shows that you're excited for coming up, or maybe what's something we've been missing. So let's go over to Facebook.
Let's do it.
Caleb Albers, which is the son of my motorcycle club brother.
Oh, nice.
Sparrow. So Caleb, welcome officially to the Fortress of Nerditude. You are now a super friend. We've upgraded our friends. So
right. You don't get a sweet biking jacket though with cool patches. It's pretty much just welcome. That's all you get.
Now that you say that, Steve, I'm going to see if I can find a Super Friends pin or patch to put on my vest.
Are you going to make a Fortress of Nerditude patch to go on the Hells Angels jackets? Yes. They'll be riding around like that.
Right. So anyway, Caleb Albers says, I'm really looking forward to seeing Black Lightning on CW. The thought of seeing a retired superhero sounds awesome, and it will be interesting to see how they incorporate Arrow and Flash into it. I'm also looking forward to Marvel's 2 new shows, The Gifted and Inhumans. I hated Ian Rowans in Game of Thrones, and can't wait to see him as a Marvel villain. As for things you need to watch, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a must. The first season was really good, and though the second season got a little dry in the beginning of the third, they really picked it up in season 4 with Ghost Rider and Madam Hydra. Highly recommended if you get past the dry spell.
Okay.
So, Caleb, so here's the thing. I started Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I think we watched maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes, and it didn't hook us for some reason. Now, I heard from a whole lot of people that kind of stuck with it. They said about halfway through the first season is when it really started pouring on and getting really good. And so I think maybe we just gave up a little too early on it. And I know it's on Netflix, and so I think I need to go back. So I'm going to take your recommendation. I'm going to put it in my queue and do that.
That's so funny.
Steve?
Same thing happened to me, actually, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Really?
I watched a few and I'm just like, it doesn't have enough action, you know? So I think I was expecting the action of a movie packed into a show, but you know, they have to build up the characters.
Right. They got to build the characters.
Yeah.
Black Lightning, though, that upcoming show on the CW. Have you seen the preview for that?
You know, oddly enough, I have, and it's an interesting look. You know, I think DC is doing what Marvel is doing in the movie world with these shows, right? They're combining, you know, a little bit of Arrow, a little bit of Flash, and a little bit of Black Lightning. I mean, they're kind of going to the top shelf to get some long forgotten superheroes, but the preview looks kind of interesting. I don't know. It was a little reminiscent, I think, of like some of like the 70s, like Blackula and like I don't know. That's what it kind of felt like to me, but you know.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Moving over real quickly to email, Peter Christensen. Dear nerds, now that you're up to 1 episode per letter in the alphabet, I'm ahead of my word quota after last week, but my plan to take over the podcast is proceeding swimmingly. He says, in your last episode, I was confused by Azojnodalpats because it's clearly not a Norwegian name. I speak Swedish and Norwegian is very similar. I could tell something was up, but hat's way off to Azoj. He says, it's clear that the shocking truth in The Last Jedi is that Luke Skywalker is Kylo Ren's father. Which, I mean, I think he's being goofy because we know it's Han Solo anyway. So thanks for another great show. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate the email. Very, very humorous.
It is going swimmingly, Peter. It is going swimmingly.
Yes. Moving over to the Twitter.
The twit, I like to call it.
Sure, you're on your own.
Mr. Google.
Mr. Azojnodalpats himself, Josh Stapleton, says, I want to try out Ghosted. I love comedy and I love sci-fi shows like X-Files and Supernatural, so hopefully this can be a good blending.
Nice.
The geeky nerd at dspin67 says, Young Sheldon, prequel for the character on The Big Bang Theory. Since I'm not a big TV viewer, just the Marvel shows on Netflix. You know what? I get that. Sometimes TV is just kind of hard to stay on top of, so the fact that they go to Netflix and you can watch a whole season like I just did with The Flash. Actually,
gorge yourself.
Right.
Yep.
Young Sheldon, Steve, how do you feel about that? The Big Bang Theory kind of spinoff.
I'm not really that interested, to be honest. I haven't seen anything for it though. I mean, I love The Big Bang Theory. When I did watch it, I didn't really stay current with it after Penny got married and all the rest. But yeah.
It is interesting sometimes. Like there's just certain things that happen in a show that just after that you're just kind of like done. Like you just mentally check out and then you're like, I'll get back to it, and then you just never do.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's how we are with The Walking Dead. Like this whole last season, like we watched the first episode, and I was just like, yeah, no, I think I'm done.
Yeah, like if Ted Danson and Shelley Long ever got together, it'd have been like, cheers, I'm done.
I've seen it, yeah.
But then Kirstie Alley came in and a new spice.
Yeah, I liked her. She also was in Star Trek, so I'm okay with that.
Oh, that's true.
Also on Twitter, Eric Baker at Lombax Whisperer.
Ooh,
I was
new
glad
one.
to see the new. I was glad to see the new trailer for Star Trek Discovery. It looks interesting, so I hope they can deliver a good show. That trailer did look really good. Like it does have me excited. But dang it, I do not want to pay for the CBS All Access hide my show behind a paywall.
Oh, that's true. That's true. A
Blah.
good shot, though. It's a good shot. I've seen that trailer as well. The shorts for it looks good.
Yeah, real good. Seth Roy at Seth Joseph Roy says the Orville looks fun.
Yep,
and that was the one with Seth MacFarlane.
Seth
right?
MacFarlane. That looks really funny, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. John at Sir John 11. The next season of Stranger Things, Game of Thrones, and House of Cards. So Sir John 11 is going Netflix on us.
All good picks. All very good picks.
Which is interesting because Netflix really is becoming like a hotbed of like new TV shows and upcoming series, and I think like Netflix is. I know that they've won some Emmys, and I wouldn't be surprised if like they end up winning an Oscar for something that's on like a Netflix only. Because I think this last year at the Academy Awards, there was a movie that was on Amazon Prime.
Oh, really?
That starred Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's younger brother. He won like an award for like Best Actor, and the movie was up for like Best Picture. So, there's lots of different venues now. Movies and TVs are going to places like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and they're doing well. So, at Sir John 11, good choices, and all on Netflix. I like that. Stream it all at once, man.
Yep.
So, thank you,
cool.
Super Friends. Thank you for answering our question of the week. We always appreciate that. Every week, we will continue to ask you a question. You can respond to us at our email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com, on Twitter @fortofnerd, and Facebook, facebook.com/fortofnerd. Steve?
Yes?
We're looking for more Super Friends to join us here. How can our current Super Friends help us find new Super Friends?
Well, from what I've been told, and I don't know how the algorithm works, but head to iTunes and rate us with a 5 stars, 2 thumbs, way up, unless you don't feel that way, and then don't rate us at all. So the Fortress of Nerditude is easier to find than a Fortress of Nerditude patch on a Hell's Angels jacket while traveling down the freeway, crocheting a knitted bonnet for a child in need.
I like how you're kind of meshing last week's with this week's.
Like worlds are colliding, Jerry.
Putting them together. Real quick, I just want to real quickly say, because you mentioned the motorcycle thing. My motorcycle club, the Templar Knights, is putting on our Fallen Patriot ride. It's the ride we put on for charity. We raise money every year for the Warriors for Freedom Foundation that gives and helps out wounded vets and their families. And that's happening this Saturday.
That is awesome.
I'm really excited. It's a lot of work we put in, like all year getting prepped for this thing. I'm really involved in it. It means a lot to me. We try to help out the veterans. And if you're in the area, if you can make it to, Salt Lake City, Utah, thereabouts, and you want to go on this ride, it starts at Timp Harley down in Linden at like 8 a.m. and then the kickstands will be up at 10 a.m. and you can go. If you can't be there, but this is something that you personally feel interested in or would like to donate money to the cause, you can actually go. There's a donate button on our website, which is just fallenpatriotride.com. And you can give $1, you can give $10, whatever you want to do. I don't typically like to ask for money, but I'm not asking for myself. This is for charity. So if that's something you're interested in, it's there. I just want to kind of put that out there real quick, but really looking forward to it. It's coming up this weekend. So
when you talk about men that have responded to the call for courageous manhood, those are them. So
we do try to step up. I will say that.
There you go. Very cool. Well, thank you again for all that have responded this week, and let's now get to the main event.
So, Steve, this week, 6 months old, we kind of wanted to do something a little different, and we kind of wanted to talk about ourselves a little bit, kind of who we are and how we've gotten here. Obviously, the podcast has been growing. We've been getting new listeners, new super friends have been joining us, and so we kind of thought, like, this might be a good opportunity to not just talk about like what we do currently now, but kind of like how we've gotten here a little bit. Like maybe not our origin story, but kind of like backfilling in some of our back history.
Yeah, like this is like flashback, like doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo.
Yeah, Wayne's World.
Wayne's World, that's right.
Yes.
Oh. Or it could be like Tim Curry, like, but that's not how it happened. It could have happened this way. Little clue.
Talk about Clue? Yeah. Yes.
I had to stop her screaming. Love that. Fantastic. Slaps Mrs. Peacock. Anyway, so we kind of thought about this and thought it would be kind of a fun thing just to share some stories that have shaped us as to who we are and not necessarily on a given theme or a given vein, but just some things can give us a little peek into what's made us the host and co-pilot that you see before you. So, one of the things that and I'll just kind of start off, and this isn't really a story, just more kind of like a theme, but so my father and brother have always been involved with cars. They've been, my brother's like a master tech and works on cars and whatnot, and my dad has always kind of run car fix-it places like Goodyear's and Pep Boys and yada, 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 ever since I was little. So my parents divorced when I was 2, so I would always go with my father every weekend and hang out with him. But there were a lot of times when he'd have to work on a day, so I'd have to go to his shop, right? So I'd just be like hanging around cars all day. And I don't know, it didn't do me any good. I don't know how to fix a car. I could barely change oil. But I always had a love for cars, and I would play in like the tires, right? So they have these huge stacks of tires like in the showroom of a Goodyear or whatever. So I'd like playing them and stuff. And I'd come home. My mom's like, "Why do you smell of rubber and you are dirty as a Frenchman?" I've been playing in tires. This is before it was like, eco cool to like crushed up tires for our playground. And so, anyway, so my brother had like a GTO, which is an old muscle car, Pontiac GTO back in the day, called it a GOAT. And, my dad would take me to one of the largest auto shows in the country, which is the Chicago Auto Show, happens every February. And you'd go around and you'd see these amazing concept cars. You'd see kind of the new fall lineup, so to speak, and Oldsmobiles are in early this year. It's a line from the Blues Brothers. And so I've tried to like help kind of carry that baton forward. And so I've taken my sons to the Chicago Auto Show a few years. I missed this past year, but it's always been something fun. So like I can remember vividly the first time that I ever saw an AC Cobra, which Shelby Cobra, car designer, whatnot, famous, very famous for the Mustang and other amazing cars. But my dad was working at a company downtown called Wells Automotive. It was on Wells Street, and they would service like all kinds of like high end cars for Daryl Hannah, who was in Splash with Tom
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks. I'm like Tom Petty. I'm like, that's not it.
Tom Petty.
One day, this is a story my dad loves to tell. One day he's on the phone doing a service order, and Oprah freaking Winfrey comes into his shop with like her like brand new Jaguar or whatever.
Did she buy a car for everyone?
No. This was before she was generous and kind. She came in and she stands there and she's like, "I'd like to be helped." And he's like, "Oh, just 1 minute." He like puts his hand over the receiver. 1 minute. I'll be off the phone in just a second. Starts talking to me and she's like, "Excuse me, I said I want to be helped." And he's like, "And I said I'll be with you in 1 minute." And she hangs up the phone and she says, "I want help now." And he says, "You want help? There's the door. Go use it." And she, on Oprah freaking Winfrey. So she walks out, never came back, and now she gives people cars. So, maybe she turned a new leaf after that experience with my father.
Maybe she was having a bad day.
Maybe she was having a bad day. But anyway,
let's not judge.
But at Wells Automotive, one day they had this pearl-colored Shelby Cobra, 427 jet engine, one of the most beautiful pieces of Detroit pig iron I have ever seen in my life. And ever since then, I fell in love with cars. So that's, I don't know, just a little story background, but
I'm not a car guy either. However, I have fond memories of your dad taking us to the Chicago Auto Show. Like, my dad never took me to the Chicago Auto Show. Yep. I don't think I've ever actually been to the Chicago Auto Show except with you and your dad. And we went like 3 or 4 years like in a row. And your dad's like, "Come on, Spence, come with us." I'm like, sure, I guess.
And man, more the merrier.
Like, cars really like aren't my, like I like cars and I drive a car. I drive a truck actually now and a motorcycle, but I've driven cars. But like, I must admit, like the love of cars that your dad has, that I saw him pass on to you, I really respect that. Like, that's something cool, like you share with him, and that you gain from his love of that. Right.
And now my kids, even in the car, like when we're driving, like I'll say, "What's that?" And they'll just know it by emblem, right? They're like, "An Infiniti, an Audi, Aston Martin, whatever." Like I'm proud of that. I'm like, that's right.
Yeah.
The baton has been passed.
See, I'm kind of going the opposite way. Like I'm like, I want my boys to be into Star Wars. So like they got like Star Wars like themed rooms, and they're like, "Daddy, I don't even know what Star Wars is." But not anymore. They know who Darth Vader is.
That's
and
right.
Luke Skywalker and Chewbacca, and we call that indoctrination.
That's right. And I just bought my son Carter a T-shirt with a 64.5 cherry red Mustang on it. So we all there's different kinds of nerds, right? So you're a Star Wars nerd. I'm a nerd, I guess. That's like, I don't know, like good at sports and like muscular and ruggedly handsome. I don't know if you call that like a jock nerd. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, to each his own.
A jock nerd.
A jerd.
Anyway. Too funny. So something about me, like growing up, and I think I knew this at an early age, and nothing's really changed. Like I just find different ways. Is like I like making people laugh. I like being kind of if I'm in a room, like I like being kind of in the center of things and like telling funny stories and getting people involved and trying to like pull people in and get people like engaged in doing stuff. 'Cause I like having a good time, and I've known that since I was really young. But as I got older, I tried to find a way to get my family to participate in these things, or get them involved in stuff. So in 1995, it was my sophomore year of high school. My family actually from Chicago took a trip to Disney World, and I know it was like a big deal because it was like the only family vacation we ever took when I was at home growing up. That was actually a family vacation, not just visiting family, right?
Right.
And we went down there, and we were having a good time. And I saw that they had this like little mini TV station that did like an episode of Star Trek starring you.
Ooh.
And you could pay it was like $60. Like it was a lot of money for us at the time, I remember. But you basically dressed up in Starfleet uniforms, and they had like two little consoles and a captain's chair in front of a blue screen. And I convinced my dad, who was like 6'5", to wear these Spock ears and be the science officer, and my mom to be in it, and my two younger sisters, Andra and Caitlin, and my brother was kind of being a stick in the mud. He didn't want to do it. But we filmed this little like 15 minute episode of Star Trek, and I was the captain, and of course, like I remember like one of the dialogue lines, like they're like, okay, you've got to go, a speed, and you get to determine what warp you want to go. And so when you get there, you can say warp 1, warp 2, warp 9, you can go all the way up to 9, whatever you want to do. And so I remember, like, in all seriousness, like there was no question in my mind. I remember they're like, okay, take us, go to warp 9. And that's like, I knew it. Like that was where I was going. Like we're going big, or we're not going at all. And I love that I have this memory of doing this and getting my family to do this with me, because like my dad had a real love of Star Trek. And I remember growing up wanting to watch Next Generation, but it started like at 9 o'clock at night, which was like a half an hour after my bedtime at the time. And I would try to always like kind of hide around this part of the couch, that like if my mom wasn't in the room, she really couldn't see me. So I'd try to watch as much of Star Trek as I possibly could until mom would find me and then like kick me out of the room and tell me to go to bed. But like my dad never like did that. Like he saw me. He directly could see where I was sitting from there. But he wanted me to be able to watch Star Trek Next Generation with him.
Do you look by the fireplace, like on the left-hand side? Like,
yes, on the left-hand side of the couch. Like, yeah. So I would kind of hang out there and like try to like squish up into a ball, like turtle up, so like my mom couldn't see me, and like hold my breath so she couldn't like hear my heartbeat or whatever. Like that. I mean, this is my thought process at the time. But I would watch Next Generation with my dad until mom would kick me out, and then sometimes like, oh, Lisa, let him watch. It's halfway through already. She's like, it's 9:30. He's got to go to bed. He's like, it's one night.
It's educational. The holodeck.
Yeah, he'll learn something. So anyway, I really gained my love of Star Trek trying to sneak it in with my dad. My dad kind of, trying to defend me a little bit and let it go. So of course, like I was like, Dad, we have to do this. You got to do this. You got to wear the Spock ears. And I've got video of this. I've got pictures of us posing in front of that blue screen. And it's just a great memory. Like, I was kind of raised on this, and my dad gave me the love of it. And then I got them involved because, I just wanted to be the center of attention and do something fun. And like my whole family, except I think for my brother, but my whole family pretty much has watched, Star Trek. I think Josh watches the movies, but like
freaking Nodal Pats.
Maybe Nodal Pats has actually seen the Next Generation and some of the others. But at the time though, he wasn't like super into it.
Sure.
But my dad like loved it so much that like when Star Trek Generations and First Contact came out, like he wanted to go with me on opening night to the movie theater. And like we'd always run into like people dressed up as Klingons, he's like, come on, Spence, let's go get a picture. I got a Polaroid somewhere with my dad and I standing next to these Klingons, and I'm wearing like a Star Trek Next Generation like Data t-shirt that had the Data's face on it. So, just kind of a little story about like where my love of Trek came from, and kind of like how, like, I tried to influence and get other people into it over time.
Well, and I remember, like, sometimes we'd like come back to your house from hanging out, doing whatever, and your dad would be out, in the driveway with his huge, and I'm not talking like, oh, you got it from like the back of Boy's Life, like telescope. Like this thing was probably 7 or 8 feet tall. It was probably as round as if you put your arms around and made a circle with your arms. It was probably about that wide. Like, it was a real telescope. And I know that he'd be out there for hours, like looking at the stars. I mean, he's always had a love for, space and just astronomy and whatever else. And so he'd be like, here, look, boys. We'd be looking at it and I'd see a little white dot. And he's like, isn't that great? I'm like, yeah, that's a white dot, but like he had definitely a passion for that. I remember he used to make, radio controlled airplanes and he'd fly those. So it is always kind of a cool thing when you can do something. And now us as fathers, you see that, like when your kids take an interest in something that you like, that's like a bond, right? And,
yeah, absolutely.
And you want to pass that on to your kids. And so I know that when you did that, even though I can't picture your father in Klingon or in Spock years, like I'm sure he was like, that's my
I've got
boy.
the picture. I've got that picture.
The only thing I'm sure that he was a little disappointed at is that when you were asked what warp, you didn't go warp 11 and do like a little Spinal Tap action.
Yeah. I, even at that point, I was like, I gotta be sacred to Star Trek, and I can't make a mockery of it. I want to take it
through
serious.
That envelope. Speaking of blown through envelopes. So one of the stories that I think kind of personifies how I was as a youth. So I was let's just be honest here. I was a fat kid. All right. I was a fat kid, and that's why I'm so funny.
I wasn't going to say it. I was not going to say it.
You were going to say it. No. So
I wasn't.
So we grew up in Sycamore, and Sycamore is kitty corner to, or shares a border with DeKalb. It's a kind of a sister city. And DeKalb has Northern Illinois University, and the mascot for Northern Illinois University is the husky dog, right? And so my grandma Winnicky, she always used to call me, oh, my little husky, for years. This is like scar tissue here. For years, I thought that she was calling me her little husky dog. Oh, no. She was calling me fat.
Yep, pretty much.
So
husky is the grandmother word for fat.
Yeah, exactly. So picture this little fat kid. So it was recently my birthday. I got like a skateboard, like this new like Gator, Street Vision, whatever skateboard. I got some new clothes. I got this like Notre Dame shirt. And we had just gone up to Wisconsin Dells to get, or to go up there to visit my aunt, Kate, who lived up in Wisconsin Dells. And we were coming back. And as Spencer begged his parents to do the Star Trek thing, I always begged my parents for fireworks. I was like a pyromaniac. I loved fireworks. So I got this huge like bushel of fireworks, like 2 like brown paper bags full. And within the fireworks were 2 mammoth smoke bombs. They were silver in color. They were about the size of, you'd say like a road flare, but about doubly thick. They would billow smoke for like 30 minutes, right? So I had this glorious idea that when I got back home, I gathered my friends together. Spence, I don't think you were there, but Theo was there, Pete was there, Joe, Benson, some others. And I had this idea that I would duct tape on the back of my skateboard 2 of these mammoth smoke bombs.
I think this is going to be a good idea.
And I would have my friends videotape my travail down what we call Trisha Drake's hill or street or whatever. It was a street near your old house where it wasn't a huge hill, but big enough, right?
Yeah.
So you could get some speed. But that wasn't enough. I toppled this cherry sundae of a good idea off with a sombrero, right? So I have this picture, this fat, chunky kid in a Notre Dame t-shirt with this sombrero on. I'm like, light me up, boys. And so they light me up. And I am not that good of a skateboarder because, suffice it to say, I was not what we would call the quote unquote athletic type. So I'm going
down.
You're
husky.
So I'm going down this street. Smoke is billowing out of this back of the skateboard, but I'm like gaining enough speed that I'm like getting a little shaky. Like the trucks on this thing are starting to like vibrate. I'm like, not good. So I kind of get down and take 1 knee, and then I get down to like 2 knees, and then I get down where I'm actually sitting on this skateboard. Still, like I'm about halfway down this hill. I'm flying. Suddenly I'm like, it's getting a little hot in here, right? Getting a little hot. I turn around and flames are like up my back. I'm like, ah! I veer off the road through 2 trash cans that had been set out for like garbage day, but they had thankfully been emptied. Bam! bam! I ram through these things, roll onto the grass, stop, drop, and roll. And these two old women are sitting on their porch, drinking Country Time lemonade, rocking, being like, "What did you do?" It's like, I set myself on fire, Grant, And so by the end of this thing, my brand new Notre Dame shirt is torched, is like crisp all around the lower rim. And my mother, in all of her sweet, non-accusatory glory, is like, "Oh, I can hem that." So she hems this shirt and it becomes like this crop top. I got like a muffin top hanging on. I'm like, I can't wear this in good conscience, Mom. So needless to say, the Notre Dame shirt made its way after one wear back into my drawer, where it stayed for the rest of its time with me. So,
wow. Do you still have that shirt?
No, but I have the video somewhere. I have the video and probably the sombrero somewhere. So,
listening to you tell that reminds me of the time when Ed Richter and I got this like brilliant idea that behind the junior high there was that long, you remember that long like concrete strip for like running sprints? Like it just went like the whole length of the junior high.
Yeah.
And we had gotten rollerblades for Christmas like that previous year. And so it was like the springtime, and we're like, "Hey, I got this idea. Let's take a tarp, and we'll wear our rollerblades, and we'll stand on one end of that, and then like we'll hold it up, and we'll let the wind catch us, and it'll just kind of pull us along at a nice pace, and we'll have a great time. Kind of like the idea of parasailing, right?
Like windsurfing, yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, windsurfing, yeah. Well, when we decided to go out, like, it was like storming, like it wasn't raining, but like the wind was whipping hard enough that like tree branches were starting to crack and fall down. And we're over there and we're like, "Okay, hold this thing up."
Now's the perfect time.
As soon as we held the tarp up, like the wind just like hit it, was like, it made this loud like crack sound and like nearly jerked my arms out of their sockets, and Ed's on the other side. And I don't know how fast we're going, but I mean, we were probably going like a good like 15, 20 miles an hour, just like holding on for dear life. Like I remember like my ankles are all like wobbling and I'm like, "Oh no." And at the far end is like this like little ditch with like a little like stream kind of running through it,
right.
Like some like little standing water with a whole bunch of like the pussy willows, like, the old, you get them kind of like around like sloughs and like wetlands and whatnot.
It was about to be joined by a few others that day.
Let me tell you what, as the concrete ended and we went into the grass, like the front of our rollerblades hit that and like immediately stopped like our forward progression as far as the wheels turning, but we went flying like another 15 feet into those pussy willows, the bulrushes there. And like, I remember like not knowing where I was when I woke up, and I was kind of like, "What's going on?" I think I actually got a concussion from it.
Before it was like a buzzword, like popular, like, I don't know, just have them go to sleep.
Yeah. And so I needless to say that I thought it was a great idea, kind of similar to your skateboarding and the fireworks story. I've never repeated that. And I don't think I would ever tell this to my boys and say, "Here, go get a tarp when it's, a tornado outside, and get on your rollerblades and let the wind carry you away."
It's so funny because just 3 days ago, I was cleaning off a tarp that I'd used for camping like a weekend before. And as I mentioned earlier, because of all the fallen tree branches, there was this really big wind. And I was like, this would be a great idea to and I was totally about to "Hey, Addison, come over here. Hold this tarp up with me." Like, this isn't like junior high. This was like last week.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Right. So that reminds me of another experience that actually happened at the junior high. And this is one more of like an embarrassing story, but one that like kind of put some hair on my chest in the way of like, I can handle it. So I'm a hermetically sealed kind of individual. My mom was a nurse, and I'm not like a, Henry, what's the guy's name?
Kissinger?
Not Henry Kissinger.
David Thoreau?
No.
Ford?
Oh, Henry Candy Bar? No.
Cavill? Henry Cavill, like Superman?
Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes. So I'm not like a guy that's like storing jars of
urine. Wait a minute. Howard Hughes, and you thought it was Henry?
Close enough, right? It starts with an H. They both were.
I was one of those Hubert Humphrey types.
It's Herbie Hancock. Anyway, but I just like to be clean. I don't like germs. So when I use the restroom, go number 2, I usually kind of like make a little nest. This was before this happened back in junior high, before they had like the little pre-made
sanitation
covers,
right?
So
So
you had to make your own. So I was a guy that like made a little nest, and whatever. And so doing my business in Mr. Myers' English class in like 7th grade junior high. And
you were in his class doing the business. That's the way it sounded. Like you
dirty
just said.
Well, it depends. I mean, if I was wearing them or not. No, so
depends. Yeah, okay, never mind.
So I'm in the bathroom, using my hall pass, going to the bathroom. I finish my business and come back into class after cleaning up and doing whatever. And apparently, like when I had pulled my shorts up that were around my ankles, like one of the pieces of toilet paper like kind of like fell into my shorts, and so they kind of pulled up. And so I'm walking down the hall with this like red
streamer of toilet paper.
Yeah, this like red Baron scarf like flying in the wind, as I'm walking into class. So I sit down, and a person whose name is not changed to protect the innocent, Scott freaking Manus. If you're listening, here you go. So like he's sitting behind me, and I would have done the same thing had the tables been turned. So he's like laughing and snickering with a bunch of like, I'm sure, pretty girls sitting behind me. And so he tries to like tweezer style with his feet, like the toilet paper, like trying to like pull it out. Pull it up from my drawers, and it makes this huge ruckus because I'm sitting like in the middle of class, everybody's laughing and stuff, and makes this big ruckus. Well, Mr. Myers gets furious, and he's like, Steve, I want to see you after class. And so everybody leaves, and whatever, and I go up and to save face, like I said, like I meant to do it. To everybody behind me, to all like the friends, I'm like, totally meant to do that. Just made a joke, class clown. Yeah. And then I got to Mr. Myers' desk after class. Everybody left. I'm like, I totally didn't mean to do that. It was totally embarrassing. And he's like, you can go. So anyway, but yeah, it was a good story of I had to save face being like, yeah, I totally meant to do that. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah. I think there's something inside all of us that, at least those of us are like the class clowns. It's like if something happens, like we just kind of shake it off and we kind of roll with it. Like, I meant to do that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, not usually, but hey, if it gets a laugh and people think we're okay with it, then we're okay with it. And we make it our own. We take ownership of it.
Exactly. Right? You got to own it. You got to own it, or you'll be owned.
Speaking of owning it, I don't know what it is, but like my friends and family who know me well enough know like what to get me when it comes to like gifts. Like people just like instinctually they say, "Oh, he loves Star Trek, he loves Star Wars, so I'll get him, an ice cube tray that you can make ice cubes of Han and carbonite." Most people, right. If you like give someone that, they're gonna be like, "Hey, thanks.
Hey, were you on the Sky Mall on a long flight?"
Right. And I look at it and go, "Hey, this is awesome. Hey, honey, can we go make some ice cubes of Han and carbonite right now?" And like, I actually have like made like little chocolates of like R2-D2 and Han and carbonite and like little Darth Vaders, and like people who know me, like I've got Star Wars chopsticks, like lightsaber chopsticks. And I showed Steve a while back, I've got a pizza cutter that's in the shape of the original Star Trek NCC 1701 Enterprise. Like that's, I get these things, and
it's actually pretty sweet looking, actually. But 14-year-old and under cannot use it. Apparently, it is that sharp.
It is dangerous. It's stainless steel, Steve. It says right on the box.
Well, right.
So like my friends and family know this about me, and I'm totally cool with that. Like people say, "Hey, take a look at Think Geek. I was looking at this for Christmas. Do you want that?" And I go, "Yeah, of course. Who wouldn't want a Doctor Who towel?" And like my wife, like I love her to death, but I think she probably just looks at some of this and is like, "Why do you need that?" And then, of course, like I come home for Mother's Day. I'm like, "Hey, honey, I got you a TARDIS cookie jar that makes noises when you open up the lid," which we totally have. And it's in our kitchen and it sits up on the counter and I love it.
And you totally got for you.
No, she loves Doctor Who. She got me hooked on Doctor Who. So, but the cool thing is, like, I found over the years, and Steve, this actually goes back to something I think you knew about me years ago. I've been given a lot of movie scripts, like books. They're like movie scripts or kind of like the shooting scripts.
Right.
You got me a Return of the Jedi script, and I've gotten like an Inception one, and my brother-in-law just this last Christmas, Eric Gifford, got me, maybe it's for my birthday. I think it's my birthday. Got me the movie script and the shooting script with like Francis Ford Coppola's actual notes from The Godfather.
That is cool.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, like, it's nothing I've ever like intentionally sought out to like go get, but it's something that like when I get it, like it's different. I mean, like the ties and, you know, the socks and the toys and the chopsticks and the pizza cutters and all that. Like, I love that stuff. But like, this is just like a little deeper level of like, hey, I can get into this and see, you know, see kind of like maybe like what the director was thinking, or, you know, what they were doing when they were shooting this scene, and like really dig into that. And so, yeah, like congrats to those people that like have figured me out pretty well. Cause if you ask me what I want for like a birthday or Christmas, I'm like, I don't know, just get me a gift card. And then like people pour in and they're, you know, they're like, hey, I got you this awesome shooting script of The Godfather with the notes. I'm like, dude, this is so much better than a gift card. This is awesome. So,
well, one thing I got to say though, like when you give a gift and you give a gift to somebody and they didn't know that they wanted it, but they wanted it, you know, like, you know, you get something, you're like, I didn't ever think about this, but this is freaking amazing. Like, that is the mark of a true gift, right? And a good gift giver is when you can give a gift to somebody that they didn't know they wanted, but they wanted it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Very cool. So kudos to me for giving you the Return of the Jedi. There you go.
I like how you work that back to come back to yourself.
That's
nice.
right, I
Very
did.
nice.
That's right, I did. So one other story that I wanted to relay, and this was one that sadly, or maybe not sadly, happened just like a year and a half ago, and it kind of goes back to the skateboard thing and some other stories I could share. Maybe my love for cars. So. I travel a lot for work, and I show a lot of properties. So, and in this particular property, I was showing a gym out in Mishawaka, Indiana, which oddly enough is right next door to Notre Dame. So it's just kind of an irony of the whole thing. But and I usually rent cars when I take longer trips because I don't want to put the miles on my car. And so I rent from this place that's a lot of business travelers. And a lot of business travelers don't really want like trucks and things like that. So I call and they're like, you know, we got a truck. Nobody really wants it. We'll give it to you for a really good price, like $30 a day, economy class. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. He's like, it's a pretty big truck. I'm like, I can handle it. So I go out there. I'm like, what the freak? It's like a V12 Longhorn Eddie Bauer edition Triton, like whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh. You got to like take 3 steps up a ladder to get into it. It's like,
please tell me it's Bigfoot.
Yeah, right.
Please
exactly.
tell me it's Bigfoot.
I mean, this thing is huge, right? So it's me and a colleague, Ed Beck, who I've mentioned a few times on the show. Shout out if he's listening. If he's not, you're a bum. And so we, in Illinois, there's something called open road tolling, right? So you have you have an iPass, which is a little transponder, and you go through and you pay the tolls that way. I know a lot of states don't have tolls. Well, Illinois does because we can't manage a dime. So you can basically drive through 67 miles an hour, and you drive through, and it pays. It takes it off like a credit card. So we go into to Indiana, and our iPass works there, and the toll booth goes up and goes down, and we drive through, and everything's fine. We go to the showing, everything's fine there. We show the property. Eventually, we find somebody who's the eventual buyer, honestly, for the property. We have lunch. We're coming back, and we're still in Indiana, and we're just talking like a few just buzz, just talking, hanging out. We stopped to get some root beer, some cheese nips, some sunflower seeds for the trip back, maybe some beef jerky, who knows what. We're probably going, I don't know, between probably 65 and 75 miles an hour. And I'm about, I don't know, I'd say like maybe 20 yards, maybe 15 yards away from the toll booth. And I forget that we're in Indiana. No open road tolling. BAM! I freaking hit the toll booth like at 70 miles an hour. I obliterate the toll gate. Just, I mean, this is basically like a bucket list of mine. Like, we ain't stopping. Like some freaking like action movie. I felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sly Stallone. So I like jam on the brakes. This guy comes out of the tow booth. He's like, what in the heck was that? I get out of the car. I'm like, I am so sorry. He's like, oh, man, don't worry about that, man. We got a room full in the back, man. They're just a downspout, a plastic downspout. I just throw another one on. Happens like 3 times a day. I'm like, seriously? And so
wow.
he's like, well, hold on. He like takes out his like, flip phone. He's like, yeah, hey, Shirley. Yeah, we got a young man down here at Tow Booth 91. Yeah, he just blew through this thing, obliterated the crap out of this thing. Yeah. You want to talk to him? So he hands the phone over to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, now here it comes. Like the license is being taken away. And she's like, hey, sugar. She's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah. She's like, you want to file a report or anything? I'm like, not if I don't have to. She's like, all right, we'll be safe. I'm like, okay. Like freaking take off. And so we're almost out of Indiana, and we come up to a toll booth. And I'm like creeping. I'm like pulling up like 5 miles an hour. And I look down, and all around the toll booth, no joke, is like shrapnel from these like toll gates that people have like blown through. I'm like, I don't feel so bad. All right. And so we get back to the office, and like Ed is telling everybody. So now it's like widely known, like freaking don't ride with Madura, because either you're going to have a smoke bomb tied to your rear, or you're going to be blown through toll gates. Anyway, so totally a bucket list item, and it is as cool as it looks in the movies. So there you go.
Wow. Wow. That's so funny. Like, speaking of as cool as it looks in the movies, Steve, do you remember, this is like around 1995, you and I were in a little musical production called Oklahoma.
Oh, I remember it well. Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Yo.
That's the way it is, yeah. So let's be honest, we're not the cowboy types.
Right.
Like I said, like I wore a Mr. Data Star Trek Next Generation t-shirt around for like a year. Cowboy, I mean, I'm wearing an Incredible Hulk t-shirt right now. I'm not really a cowboy type. But we were in the movie, we were in the musical in High School of Oklahoma, and we had to go get cowboy boots. And like, when you buy new cowboy boots, or at least the junky ones we got for like $20,
right? There
was like this like really like shine on them. And everyone said, "Oh, you got to go rough those things up and use some sandpaper and kind of get the luster off them, because otherwise you're going to stand on stage and you're going to look normal, but the lights are going to be just whoa,
like fancy pants,
shining off your boots." So you and I, we never like start small and stay small on anything. We usually ramp up until one of us is getting in trouble or getting hurt or
hospitalized.
Whatever. Yeah. So I remember that we had this great idea, like, oh, we'll start with sandpaper. I'm like, oh, okay, sandpaper. And that, like, I don't know, we spent like 20 minutes and like we hadn't made much of a dent. And so then you're like, hey, I got this idea. Let's go get my Dodge Omni and I'll drive and you hang out the open door and hold the boot down to the pavement and let's scrape it along the pavement. And so you're driving like 15 miles an hour and I'm like hanging out the car door, like, and you can't just like barely like lean over, because you got to touch that thing to the concrete.
You got to commit.
Like, I'm like horizontal and like my head's like hanging like down below the rest of my body, and I'm hanging out and I'm holding and I'm scraping these things, and it started taking off the shine off the boots pretty darn quick.
Should say.
But then you reminded me that you had a skateboard in the back of your Omni. And so the next thing, because like we also had to like wear these cowboy boots around because we needed to kind of break them in. And let's be honest, we didn't wear cowboy boots, so our feet weren't accustomed to how they fit. So the next thing I know, like I'm in a pair of like Michael Jordan or like Chicago Bulls basketball shorts, cowboy boots, and like and probably like a Star Trek t-shirt or something, and I'm holding onto your back bumper, standing in cowboy boots on a skateboard,
doing a Marty McFly.
Yes. I was like, this is gonna be just like Back to the Future.
It's the power of love.
And we're in the high school parking lot doing like 15 miles an hour, and you're like just kind of going straight. But then I remember like you went over a freaking speed bump. And that's when I jumped on top of your car for dear life and held on because cowboy boots and all, I wasn't going to make it over that thing.
You should bring that outfit back, I think. Like really to get the mojo going. Like Brita would be like, wow, that's muy caliente if I don't, as you say so myself.
I tell this story just because it reminds me of like, every like good idea starts small. But then, like, you and I just continue to, like, build on it. And, like, we go for, like, the comedic effect. Like, obviously the next thing we're doing, we're trying to have fun, but we also think it looks goofy and dumb, that we're trying to surf behind your car in cowboy boots and, like, shorts and, and a skateboard. And it's just ridiculous dumb, but, like, that's us. Like, that's who we've always been. It's, how can we take something that's normal and make it funny? And then how can we take something funny and just like make it ridiculous and like go that extra mile, right?
Right. Ludicrous speed. They've gone to plaid.
Yes.
See that skateboard incident with the cowboy boots just needed smoke bombs, and that really would have been the creme de la creme. But
do you remember we also took tap dancing lessons in those cowboy boots?
Oh gosh, yes. Cap and dance. Yeah.
I try not to remember that part.
Right, but no. So we hope that this small evening of fun and tales of flaxen cord have given you just a small peek into who we are and a little bit about why we are the way we are and why we have to take
morons.
Freaking make like a tree and get out of here. It's make like a tree and leave. You sound like a dang fool when you say it wrong. Anyway, though, so I think the question of the week should probably be, apropos and akin to something like this. Like, what is there a story that kind of defines you? Something funny, something weird, that you could share with us that just gives you a little peek into who you are as our listeners and as our super friends, as Spencer has coined you.
Yes.
So something this week that you could share, just a little short story or something like that. It doesn't have to be a novel or anything, but a funny experience or anything that would give us a laugh and feel a kinship with you, our listeners. Does that sound good, Spence?
I love that idea, Steve, because we always ask for questions. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? But yeah, I'd like to hear from some of our super friends, kind of what defines them and like their story. And, as we interact with people more, I like that idea, Steve. I like it a lot. Yeah,
very cool. Well, all right. Well, I think now is the time when we must bid adieu. So till we meet again, Spence, you want to close this one out?
May the force be with you. Always.